Welcome everyone to today's Psych Talk. The topic today is a continuation of our sort of theme of unhelpful thinking. And today's styles of unhelpful thoughts that we'll talk about are all or nothing and overgeneralizing. So just to recap on sort of why we're going through this segment, our thoughts can have an effect on how we feel and how we act. Sometimes we engage in styles of thinking or even automatic thoughts that can make us feel and act in ways that are unhelpful and can make situations worse. And the point is that often we can choose the kinds of thoughts that we put more focus on. And hopefully, if we are able to disrupt those cycles of negativity and challenge our unhelpful thoughts, we can have better outcomes and build more positive thinking habits as well for the future. So today we're talking about two sort of related unhelpful thinking styles. So the first one that I'll probably go through is overgeneralizing. Now, what that is a little, I guess, self-explanatory. It's sort of in the name. Basically, it's taking one example or instance of something that happens to you and sort of taking that to mean that this is always going to happen, or that you extrapolate this over all future situations. Some examples that you might have heard other people say or engaged in yourself. Things never turn out well for me. That's so typical of her. All guys are like that. A big one. People will always let you down. Right? So generalizing, let's say you have just been let down as an example, but then generalizing that to say, well, all people, because that's effectively what that statement says, all people will, in all cases, always let you down. Now, just to give an example, because I am playing, to give a bit of context for those who might not know, I am playing a game on Twitch at the moment called Genshin Impact. It is a gacha game, which means it has a little bit of a gambling element in there. And sometimes you will hear people say, things never turn out well for me, in terms of, for instance, I just have bad luck. Now, in fact, the probabilities of the gambling element are the same for everybody. It's the same as if you were to go to a casino and lose the majority of your money. You might be tempted to say, well, I just have bad luck. I'm just an unlucky person. Whereas the truth might be, well, everybody loses eventually at the casino because that's how they make money. Similarly, with my gaming example, the gambling rates are listed. We know that there is only a very small probability. The probability is listed, everybody knows it. So there's no reason to believe that your luck is any less bad or less good than anyone else's. And yet we still say these things to ourselves, these statements. And let's say, again, to take another gaming example, let's say life was a role-playing game. And in role-playing game, we know we have statistics like strength. We have statistics like dexterity, maybe constitution, wisdom, intelligence, charisma, that sort of thing. And everyone will have different attributes, right? Some people will be stronger than other people. Some people will be more intelligent, perhaps. Let's say we had a luck attribute, and you wake up every day knowing that you have 0 in that attribute, and most people, let's say, have 10 as an average. Right? You wake up every day, you check your attributes, and you know you have 0. How would that make you feel? Probably not great. Knowing that you're actually less lucky than everyone else, knowing that bad luck is going to happen to you, often that's what we tell ourselves. That's what we're actually saying, that we have in life less of a luck attribute than other people. Bad things just tend to happen to me. I just tend to be an unlucky person. Now, if we apply this to real life, and we apply a little bit of probability from maths, if we apply a bit of science, we can pretty much say that that's not going to be true. Unless you believe that some divine power has cursed you, or whatever it might be. If you believe in maths and science, they would say that no one is really less or more lucky than other people over the long run in terms of the law of large numbers. Luck is generally considered coincidence. So effectively what you're doing when you're saying that I'm just an unlucky person is purposefully making yourself feel bad over something that's not true. Is that helpful? And also making broad, overly general conclusions based on a singular example, or let's say, even if it's not just a single example, very little evidence to say that this is going to always happen, tends to make us feel like things are inevitable and that events are out of our control. So if you say that people will always let you down, the always component and the all people component, which is effectively what you're saying, may make you feel that things will always be this way and there's not much you can do to change it, and that all of your future situations will be quite bleak. Again, is that a helpful thing to be saying to yourself? And overgeneralizing can often make, shall we say, mountains out of molehills, right? It can make bad things seem like they're worse than they are. So let's say in a personal relationship, in a romantic relationship, you say, I don't know if maybe you've said something like this, or you've heard maybe someone else say it, but you can imagine in a romantic relationship, if someone says something like, you never do anything romantic. I'm always the one planning things. You're always so lazy. I'm guessing those statements wouldn't make most people feel very valued in the relationship. They may become quite defensive when they hear things like that. And again, even though the person saying them may not necessarily have ill intentions, it can be quite hurtful to hear those things, those statements. And how helpful are they to actually change someone's behavior? If you tell someone you're always lazy, you're always so lazy, does that really, are you expecting that really to motivate them to change? And if not, then how helpful is it to engage in that kind of overgeneralizing? The a related unhelpful thinking style is all or nothing thinking. So again, have you ever heard of phrases like this being said by either yourself or someone close to you? Only winning matters. Nobody remembers second place. If I don't get an A, I'm a failure. If I'm not the best at what I do, there's no point. So this is often termed either black or white or all or nothing thinking. So effectively, you tend to only see one extreme or another. There's only success or failure. There's no in between. There's either right or wrong. There's either good or bad. There's no middle ground. There's no grey area. Now, if we think about phrases like only winning matters, or nobody remembers second place, or if I don't get an A, I'm a failure, often what your brain is trying to do is to motivate you. So this is your brain's way of trying to be helpful and saying, okay, come on, nobody remembers second place. We need to win this. If you don't get an A here, your parents are going to kill you. It's going to be, all your efforts have gone to waste. You may as well not have tried. So, we need to get this mark. That's your brain's way of trying to motivate you, maybe to study, maybe to practice harder. The thing is, these kinds of statements and this kind of thinking can also be unhelpful. So if you're finding it helpful and you're finding it motivational to do this sort of thing, that's absolutely fine. With any of these unhelpful thinking styles, if you're finding them helpful or you're not finding them to be having a negative impact on your life, absolutely fine. But where I would be concerned, or where you may want to reconsider having all or nothing thoughts, is in instances where it can backfire and become unhelpful. So if you recall back to one of our previous videos on how anxiety affects productivity and performance, increasing stress and anxiety beyond a certain point can be counterproductive and actually decrease your productivity and performance. So putting more pressure on yourself by saying only winning matters, or if I don't get an A, I'm a failure, the extra stress you're adding onto yourself may actually reduce your performance, your ability to perform, based on what we discussed in that video. So all or nothing thinking can also narrow the definition of what success is. So it's only winning, it's only a very top mark, and increases the stakes of any perceived failure. And what that does is it basically makes it more likely that you'll have a negative outcome than if you'd had more balanced thinking, for instance. And we know that negative outcomes tend to be accompanied by negative emotions, maybe by coping mechanisms that can be helpful or unhelpful. So is it helpful to think in a way that increases the probability of negative outcomes occurring, at least perceived negative outcomes? And all or nothing thinking doesn't really leave much room for self-compassion. And we talked a little bit about self-compassion in some of the other talks. I will do a full talk on self-compassion and why it's important, why it's such an important part of self-care and mental health. But you can imagine that if only winning matters, if you say to yourself, if I'm not the best at what I do, there's no point. It doesn't leave a lot of room for forgiving yourself for not performing at maximum, for not winning. So how helpful is it, again, you need to ask yourself, to have those unrelentingly high standards and potentially unrealistically high standards of yourself all of the time? Would it be more helpful to engage in a little bit more balanced or grey area thinking? So some of the similarities, as you can maybe have picked up, between all or nothing and overgeneralization as unhelpful thinking styles is they both offer quite broad, sweeping statements rather than looking at a situation on its own. And broad statements, overgeneralizing, as we know with, let's say, in other areas of life, like stereotyping, can be unhelpful. Often all or nothing thinking and overgeneralization don't reflect reality. When you say someone never does anything romantic for you, often if you consider the evidence, that's probably not the case. They probably have done at least one romantic thing. Otherwise, why are you still in that relationship? It's just maybe they haven't done it recently, so you could put that qualifier on it. And even if you just put a little qualifier on a statement, you haven't done anything romantic recently. You can see how that takes a lot of the edge off of that statement, a lot of the venom out of that statement, compared to you never do anything romantic. Both all or nothing thinking and overgeneralization don't tend to leave room for the middle ground, for the grey areas, for a more balanced way of thinking. And again, that can be unhelpful. And as I mentioned before, both of these create unnecessary stress and anxiety, which can lead to other negative emotions like sadness. And it's not that stress, anxiety, and sadness are bad in and of themselves. I would say no emotion is inherently unhelpful. It's just that in many situations it's not helpful to increase your anxiety or your feeling of sadness, let's say, if you are already feeling those things. Right? But we all know of situations where piling on negative emotions is not going to be helpful. Okay, so having said all of that, what are some potential thought-challenging strategies or related tips that we can use to maybe help us out when we are engaging in either overgeneralizing or all or nothing thinking? Again, some of these will be similar to tips from other videos for other types of thought, unhelpful thinking. And again, the most important place to start is identification. Doing a bit of self-reflection to understand, okay, firstly, do these thinking styles apply to you? And if so, for instance, what kinds of all or nothing thinking have you engaged in the past? In what kinds of situations are you more likely to engage in overgeneralizing? So is it, with a romantic partner that you're more likely to overgeneralize because you feel more intense emotions when you're with your partner? You feel more joy, but you also feel more frustration and anger, and then you tend to overgeneralize. It may be for some people that's the case. For other people, it might be when they're at work. That tends to increase their stress levels and anxiety levels, and they engage in all or nothing thinking more often at work than not. So, as with any unhelpful thinking, identify what kinds of thoughts apply to you and the situations that you're doing it. And contrary to what we had last time, which was the negative mental filter, and checking the evidence being one of the strategies that may not be as effective there. Checking the evidence for these two unhelpful thinking styles is often very effective. Just because, so as an example for overgeneralizing, right? If you were to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, does what I'm saying absolutely apply to all situations? Or is it only most of the time? Or is it only this one time? Right? So if you're someone who says, well, people always let you down, have you been let down by every person in your life, with bar none? Because that's what always means, right? If we were to take a technical view of the English language, that's what always means. Always means every single instance. So is that true? Just checking that evidence. Have there been times where people have not let you down, have been there for you when you've needed them? And if that's the case, then maybe that statement actually is false. Similarly with what I said before, if your partner, if you're saying, you never help out around the house, or you never do anything romantic, is that only one instance today that you're feeling that? Or do you honestly feel that every day? Right? That's what you need to ask yourself. And often, what will be happening is you're particularly frustrated about something on that day, in that moment, that's making you feel like this is an ongoing problem. But again, is it helpful to phrase it in a way that's not true because they have helped out in the past, because they have done romantic things in the past? For people who say, I'm an unlucky person, I just have bad luck, checking the evidence. What are the actual probabilities? If you go to a casino and lose all your money, is that only you having bad luck? Or is that a general property of the casino? Right? Can you think of others who also have bad luck? Can you think of times where you've had good luck? And often there will be times where you can think of. And potentially that means that maybe you're not an unlucky person inherently. You experience instances of bad luck, like everyone else. That doesn't necessarily mean you're an unlucky person. And even if, even if we are stuck with those beliefs for a little bit at the start, I mean, it's very difficult to challenge some beliefs that we're quite attached to. How helpful is it to think of it in that way? So let's say, you have had a lot of instances where people have let you down. Not always. There have been people that have helped you, but a lot of people have let you down, or at least you're attached to that thought. Well, how helpful is it to think of life that way? How helpful is it for when you meet someone in the future to already prejudge them that they will let you down? Right, so asking yourself those kinds of questions. Similarly with all or nothing thinking, okay, nobody remembers second place, winning is everything. But accidents happen. Things out of your control happen. So if you don't win, how helpful is it to beat yourself up over that? How helpful is it to keep saying to yourself, nobody remembers second place, when you're in second place, when that's the only conclusion that's come out of the race or the competition, whatever it might be? Is it helpful to keep beating yourself up over that? Can there be a middle ground where you can say to yourself, well, there's always next time, I tried my best? They're very cliche statements, but these are the kinds of statements that can really put you into that self-compassion, self-forgiveness mode, and take that edge off the sort of harsh expectations that we have of ourselves. Similarly with other unhelpful thinking styles that we've encountered before, if I told my friend or partner I was thinking this way, what would they say to me? Right? If I told my friend that I think people will always let you down, that's just how I see the world, what would they say? And often we'll find, well, that they wouldn't necessarily just agree with it. They would try and say, oh, well, maybe, present a little bit more of an optimistic view. If my friend told me they were thinking this, so if you reverse the roles, if your friend said to you, people always let you down, what would you say to them? Would you say, yeah, that's absolutely true, there's no point putting yourself out there, there's no point relying on people because they'll always let you down, you can only rely on yourself? Maybe some people would say that, but how helpful is it to think like that? And specific to all or nothing thinking, sometimes in the moment when we have a perceived failure, so we don't achieve what we set out to, and our all or nothing thinking kicks in, and we say, well, it was, getting into this course or bust. I don't have any second option. It was getting this job, this perfect dream job, or nothing. Now what am I going to do, right? It was winning, or nobody remembers second place. It was pointless for me to compete in the first place. When we're feeling these intense emotions, it can be helpful to challenge them with, for instance, a question like, how much will this matter 1 year from now? How much will this matter 5 years from now? Will there be other opportunities? How helpful is it for me to sit here dwelling on my failures? Would it be more helpful for me to pursue something else? Often the answer will be common sense, shall we say. Now, of course, as we talked about before, the risk there, of course, is that you may catastrophize and think, well, now that I failed this, I'm going to fail everything else, and then I'm going to be unemployed, and then I'm going to be alone, and that sort of thing. Don't do that. If you do find yourself catastrophizing, I have a video on that. So, is there an in-between? With all or nothing and overgeneralizing, honestly, is there an in-between where things are not perfect, but also not a disaster? And would it be more helpful for me to focus on that more balanced thought, that grey area? Okay, that pretty much brings the talk to an end. As always, I'll finish off with a couple of quotes that I quite like, with a little bit of relevance to what we just talked about. Now, the first quote we have today, I looked up and it was attributed to Winston Churchill, but as with many Winston Churchill quotes, that's often false. So, Quote Investigator, which I quite like, says that this quote is actually not from Winston Churchill, so they've disproved that origin, and that we actually don't know who to attribute this quote to. So, anyway, the quote is, success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. And the second quote, a bit of a cheeky one, attributed to Mark Twain, all generalizations are false, including this one. As always, thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next Psych Talk.